Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going through the 2026 U.S. gubernatorial map, and I'm going to be going state by state and assigning each governor's race by the latest polling, the polling ranking in this state. So it's going to be the most recent poll in every single state. The rankings are going to be as follows. Anything that's 15% or more for the Democrats will be safe Democrat. Anything that's in between 5 and 15% will be likely Democrat. Anything in between 1 and 5% is lean Democrat. And anything 1 point under will be tilt Democrat. And then same thing on the Republican side, 15 or over will be safe red, 5 to 15 will be likely red, 5 to 1 lean red, and tilt 1 point under tilt red. So that's how it's going to be. We're going to go across the country. We're going to start in Oregon and work our way east. I have not checked any of these polls since the last time I did this video back in June, so this is the first time I'm doing it. So I'll be finding out the most recent polling information with you in real time as we go. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go to the state of Oregon and the governor's race between Democratic Governor Tina Kotek and Republican challenger, who was also the Republican candidate from 2022, and Christine Drazan. I do believe there has been some polling in this race, so let's see where the most recent poll is. And the most recent poll from Public Opinion Strategies, a Republican-affiliated pollster, actually has Drazan at 48%. Tina Kotek has 44%. So typically the way this would work in a prediction video is I would take a poll that's Republican or Democratic biased and I would shift it about 4 to 5% to account for the bias of the poll. But this video, I'm just going off of what the poll says. I'm not putting any of my interpretation in, so I'm not skewing the results one way or the other. So for this video, it's lean Republican, a 4-point lead on it. It's certainly, I don't expect Oregon to be a lean Republican win, but I'm putting it as lean Republican because I'm just doing what the most recent poll says. I'm not touching any of the numbers or adjusting or anything. I don't want to skew the results, but that's what Oregon's most recent poll says out of that race. Next, we'll go to the state of California, where we know the primary is over. Democrat Javier Becerra is facing off against Republican Steve Hilton, and I do believe we have gotten some general election polling as well. Yeah, the most recent poll has Becerra at 61%, Steve Hilton 36%. That's under 30 points, roughly about 25% or so lead for Becerra over Hilton, well over the 15% threshold. No surprise, California comes in as safe for the Democrats. Now we can go to the state of Alaska. An interesting governor's race, as Alaska election law has all the candidates running on the ballot, and then I believe it's the top 4 advance to the general election, and then ranked choice voting is used if nobody breaks 50% of the vote, which obviously with 4 candidates running, it probably won't. It is listed as likely Republican, but in the most recent poll from the Alaska Survey Research actually shows the Democrat Tom Begich. The way for this one is going to work, we're going to go for the final head-to-head result between Tom Begich and the Republican Bernadette Wilson for ranked choice voting, and for Maine, we'll do the same thing if that's needed. And it ends up being with Tom Begich at 54%, Bernadette Wilson at 46%, an 8-point lead. And that one, that poll is from back in April. There's also an Alaska Survey Research poll as well between Tom Begich and the Tom Begich at 51% going up against Bernadette Wilson, and that ends up being 51% for Begich to 49% for Wilson. So technically, even though it's listed first for Begich versus Bishop, Bronson, and Bernadette Wilson, technically the most recent poll is actually this Alaska Survey Research Democratic affiliated poll from the end of June to the beginning of July. So I was going to go with this one initially, but technically the most recent poll is actually this one. It doesn't change the winner, as Begich is still leading here, but it does change the margin. A 2-point victory would technically put Alaska's governor's race as a lean Democratic ranking. Next, we can move to the state of Hawaii, which obviously is not next to it geographically, but is on the map. Democrat Josh Green, the incumbent governor, is running for re-election. I'd be pretty surprised if there's any polling. Yeah, there's not been any polling yet in this race. So when there's no polling, we're going to defer to the consensus rankings, and they have the race listed as safe for the Democrats. Not a surprise in the state of Hawaii. Now we'll go to the state of Idaho, where Republican Governor Brad Little is running against Democrat Terry Pickens. I'm not totally sure if there's polling. Yeah, there's not any polling yet on this, so the rankings are all safe so we're going to put it as safe for the Republicans. Now we can look at the state of Nevada, where Nevada, I know for a fact, does have polling. This is going to be one of the closer competitive governor's races on the 2026 map between incumbent Republican Governor Joe Lombardo and Democratic Attorney General Aaron Ford. This is going to definitely be a very, very close one. The most recent polling, we have two. We have the polling averages, which show it as a lead for Joe Lombardo on the averages, but the public policy polling, most recent poll from the Democratic pollster, has it a 44-44 tie for Lombardo and Aaron Ford with 12% undecided. So technically, the most recent poll in this race actually puts the state of Nevada as a toss-up, a tie, 50-50. So even though I'd normally make a prediction for this race, the most recent poll is a tie, so we're going to leave it as a toss-up. Next, we can go to the state of Arizona, another governor's race that initially looked like to be one of the more competitive ones as well. We're going to see that ultimately ends up being the case. The primaries were just settled on I believe it's Tuesday the 21st. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs will be facing off against Republican Representative Andy Biggs in the general election. The rankings have it in between toss-up and lean Democrat. For the most recent polling, Hobbs is leading in the averages over Andy Biggs. The most recent poll from Noble Predictive Insights from May 5th through 7th shows Katie Hobbs at 41%, Andy Biggs 37%, around a 4-point lead for Hobbs over Biggs with 16% undecided, which actually, I mean, it is lean Democrat. That's not really too far off from what my prediction and a lot of other predictions have it as a lean Democratic win. So that one so far seems to be one of the more spot-on rankings in this video. Next, we can move to the state of Wyoming. Wyoming, typically a very reliable Republican state. This is an open race with Mark Gordon ineligible to seek a third term. So 3 Republicans are running in Brett Bean, Eric Barlow, Megan Degenfelder, and Kurt Blake. Not totally sure how it's going to play out, but we do know that President Trump has endorsed Megan Degenfelder in this Republican primary. Democratic side, only presumptive nominee is Ken Kasner. No polling yet, but solid Republican rankings. No surprise, Wyoming goes as safe red. Colorado, we do know these primaries have officially been settled, where the Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser won his Democratic primary. Victor Marks, the Republican, narrowly squeaked out a very close victory in that primary, and now head to the general election, where there's not been any polling done. Predictions are mostly solid Democrat. No surprise here, Colorado goes as safe for the Democrats. Next, we can move to the state of New Mexico, which we know on the Senate side likely is not going to be too competitive. The governor's side, Deb Haaland, is going to be facing off against Republican Greg Hull in the general election. Split rankings between likely Democrat and safe Democrat. No polling yet for this race, so 3 out of the 5 are likely. We're going to put New Mexico as a likely Democratic state. Next, we'll go to the state of South Dakota. South Dakota, this is, I do believe, the governor's seat currently held by Larry Roden. He is going to a runoff election against Toby Doden, so we still have to wait and see how that one's going to go once that all plays out. No polling yet. Most of the rankings have it, though, as safe Republican. We can put South Dakota as safe red. Nebraska, these primaries are over. The Republican governor, Jim Pillen, I do believe it is facing off against Democrat Lynn Waltz in the general election. I do believe there has been some polling done. From towards the end of April, with Lake Research Partners having Jim Pillen at 47%, Lynn Waltz at 45%, 5% undecided in that race. So actually, usually Nebraska, the governor's races, not really too competitive, more of a safe Republican state, but the most recent poll has it listed as a lean Republican race. The state of Kansas should be a very close race. This is currently held by Democrat Laura Kelly, and the primaries are happening in, I think, just a few weeks. So we still have to know how it's going to play out between Ethan Corson, Cindy Hochler, and Kurt Skoog on the Democratic side. Hochler and Corson, I imagine, will be 2 of the top 2 candidates in that race. Hochler leading in both polls so far. Republican side, Ty Masterson, the president of the Kansas Senate, does have the endorsement of President Trump. Will probably end up being the nominee, especially after former Governor Jeff Collier dropped out once he didn't get the endorsement of Donald Trump. Still TBD how this one's going to go. No polling yet, but lean Republican from 3 of the 5 rankings. We'll put Kansas as a lean Republican state for the GOP. Next, we'll look at the state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I do believe, also went to a runoff. I'm not sure if it's been settled yet. No, it's not. So Republicans still TBD. Cindy Munson will be the Democratic candidate. It's going to be in between Ginter Drummond and Mike Mazzei in that race. As for the general election, again, no polling yet, but solid Republican rankings from most. Oklahoma will go as safe red. The Texas governor's race, Greg Abbott is running for another term. He's facing off against the Democrat Gina Hinojosa in the general election. I do believe there has been some polling done in this one. The rankings are mostly solid Republican, but the most recent poll from New York Times and Siena University, so actually a very reputable polling firm from just a few days ago, or no, from a month ago now, June, not July. But Greg Abbott, 51%. Gina Hinojosa, 44%, about a 7% lead, would throw Texas into the likely Republican category. Again, probably one of the more spot-on rankings that we'll probably see on this map. Next, we can go to the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota governor's race has been getting a lot of talk after President Trump has endorsed Mike Lindell in this race. Amy Klobuchar, the U.S. Senator, will be the Democratic candidate. On the Republican side, whether it's going to end up being Mike Lindell or Lisa DeMuth, still have to wait and see how this is going to play out. Despite Trump's endorsement of Lindell over DeMuth, the polling shows it's still kind of an open race, with Lindell at 35, DeMuth 26, still 22% undecided. We're going to go with the assumption Lindell ends up winning, though, as he is the leader in the most recent poll. The rankings have it solid Democrat. For Klobuchar versus DeMuth, the most recent poll is an 8-point lead. For Klobuchar versus Lindell, though, it says about a 27-point lead in this race, I think it is. Or no, it might be a little bit less than that, because that would be in the 60s. So it'd be about a 17-point lead for Klobuchar over Lindell in this race. This would put it in over 15 points. Minnesota goes as safe for the Democrats. Now, Iowa's going to be interesting between Zach Land, the Republican who upset Randy Feenstra in the Republican primary, and Rob Sand, who is a Democrat. The Democrats in Iowa are very optimistic about his chances in this race. For the general election, toss-up for most of the rankings lean Democrat from one. There's only been a handful of polls, but a new poll from Fox News came out not too long ago, towards the end of June. It showed Rob Sand at 53%, Zach Land at 44%, about a 9-point lead for Rob Sand. Definitely one of the larger polls we've seen in this race, after the New York Times Siena University poll only showed it a 1-point race. So roughly about a 9-point lead would put the state of Iowa into the likely Democratic category. Definitely something that we're not too accustomed to seeing on the map thus far. Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be facing off against Frederick Love in the general election. No polling, but solid Republican rankings across the board. Arkansas will go as safe red. Now we can talk about the state of Wisconsin, where Wisconsin, very competitive governor's race. This Democratic primary is very, very exciting to watch. We do know that Mandela Barnes, Joel Brennan, David Crowley, Francesca Hong, Brett Holsey, and Kelda Royce are the candidates after Sarah Rodriguez dropped out. Now, the polling data has shown a close race, but one that Francesca Hong seems to have the lead in right now, with the most recent poll showing her up about 20 points, still with 28% of the vote undecided. So ultimately, we're going to have to wait and see how this goes. I do plan on doing an election night prediction video on this one as well in the coming days. But for this video, we're going to go with Francesca Hong as the leader. She's leading in the most recent poll on the Democratic side. Republican U.S. Representative Tom Tiffany will be the Republican candidate for the general election. As for the general, we can see here toss-up from most of the rankings. The most recent polling for Barnes versus Tiffany is Barnes up by about 5. But for Brennan versus Tiffany, Tiffany's up by 1. Crowley versus Tiffany, Crowley's up by 1. For Tiffany versus Hong, Marquette University poll, 44-44 shows Hong and Tiffany tied on this part of the poll. And then I think it's, let's see, among likely voters, it's a tied race. Among only registered voters, Tiffany's at 43, Hong is at 40. So we're going to go, this one's listed first, we're going to go with the likely voters here. But again, another tie in this race will put Wisconsin as a toss-up between Hong and Tiffany. If that ends up being the matchup, that's going to be a very, very close, exciting race to watch for in the midterms. Next, we'll go to the state of Illinois with Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker running for re-election against 2022 opponent Darren Bailey. This race should not be too competitive really at all. And yeah, 20-point lead in the only poll from back in November. No surprise, Illinois goes as safe for the Democrats. We'll head to the south now. We'll head to the state of Tennessee, where Republican U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn is running in this primary to be the governor of the state of Tennessee. No primaries have been settled yet. On the Democratic side, a bunch of candidates are running as well. I'm not sure if there's been any general election polling. Oh, there has actually. between Marsha Blackburn and Jerry Green. It's an over 15-point lead in both of those polls. We're going to put Tennessee as a safe Republican win. The state of Alabama is kind of an interesting matchup from a election standpoint. This is a rematch of the 2020 Senate race. Tommy Tuberville is facing off against former Democratic Senator Doug Jones in the general election. Though for Doug Jones, it doesn't look like this time it's going to be as close. The only poll from Signal shows it about a 19-point lead for Tuberville over Doug Jones in this race, making it go as 15 points. It won't be like the special election for Doug Jones on that one, it seems. Next, we got to go to the state. Actually, we'll do Florida first, then I want to talk about Georgia because everyone, I'm sure a lot of people are waiting for Georgia as well. Florida, this is going to be the primary, has to play itself out still between Jay Collins, Byron Donalds, Paul Renner, and James Fishback as the four most notable candidates. The polling for a while has had Byron Donalds as the consistent leader in this race. He's currently leading by a whopping 35.3% in the polling averages. The most recent poll has him up about 43% over Jay Collins. So we can assume Byron Donalds will win the Republican primary. On the Democratic side, David Jolly appears to be the likely Democratic nominee as he's leading the most recent primary poll by about 30 points as well. For the general, rankings are kind of split between solid Democrat, likely Democrat, or solid Republican, likely Republican, and lean Republican. The most recent poll from University of North Florida has Donalds at 46%, Jolly at 41%, so about a 5-point lead for Byron Donalds. Whereas James Fishback versus David Jolly, only about a 4-point lead. Paul Renner, David Jolly, only about a 1-point lead. So interesting, but Donalds at 5-point just hits into that likely Republican category. Florida goes as likely R. Next, we're going to move to the state of Georgia. Georgia, this is going to be, I know I've said this a few times, but this is probably going to be the closest governor's race in the country between Rick Jackson and Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now that this race has been settled, outgoing Governor Brian Kemp is term limited, and this one's going to be, toss up from all the rankings. No surprising here. The most recent poll from State Navigate has Lance Bottoms at 51%, Rick Jackson at 44%. That is about a 7-point lead. The WIC poll before that, at the end of June, shows it a tied race. The Fox News poll from the end of June had it a 5-point lead. So Keisha Lance Bottoms narrowly leading so far, but definitely going to be a very close race as we get closer to the general election. For now, though, Georgia will go in the likely Democratic category, based on that most recent poll. We're going to move now to South Carolina, where the primaries have been settled. Alan Wilson, the Attorney General, is officially won the primary against Pamela Evett. He'll be facing off against Jermaine Johnson in the general election. No polling yet since this primary has been settled. 3 rankings have it solid Republican, 2 have it as likely Republican. We're going to put this race as a solid Republican win in the state of South Carolina. Next, we're going to go to the state of Michigan. Michigan, another hotly contested governor's race to keep an eye out for. It started out as a special circumstance as there was a 3-way race going on between Jocelyn Benson, John James, and former Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, who was running as an independent. Once he withdrew from the race and it became a more 1v1 matchup of Democrat versus Republican, the Democratic chances of winning, I would say, have definitely improved in this race. Jocelyn Benson, the Michigan Secretary of State, who in her past few elections has really performed very strongly, even overperformed, you could argue, will be the Democratic candidate. On the Republican side, there is a competitive primary underway, but John James, the U.S. representative, is likely to defeat Perry Johnson, the candidate for president in 2024. You may recognize that name from that. And Mike Cox, the former Attorney General as well, and Tom Leonard, the former Speaker of the Michigan House, and Eric Nesbitt have all dropped out of the race, and a lot of them have endorsed John James as well. So James, having the endorsement of President Trump, should end up winning this primary really without probably too much of a problem, despite the polling data being relatively competitive when Cox and Johnson and James were all in the race. But we'll see how that goes, but John James should win that. For the general election, how things are going to look right now, most of the rankings have it lean Democrat. The most recent poll, though, from Jocelyn Benson versus John James shows 51% for Benson, 40% for James, a 11-point lead for Jocelyn Benson in that race. So Michigan, despite being what's expected to be one of the more closer races, Michigan actually goes as likely Democrat, like Georgia as well on this map. So it's interesting so far. Likely Democrat Georgia, likely Democrat Michigan, likely Democrat Iowa. It's not something you're usually seeing on a lot of these maps, so it's very interesting. The state of Ohio also going to be another very competitive one between Vivek Ramaswamy and Amy Acton. The polls have been very tight since these primaries have been settled a few months ago. We can see now officially the polling averages have Amy Acton up over Vivek Ramaswamy about 1.8%. Across all of them, the most recent poll came from New York Times, Siena University, showing Ramaswamy at 47%, Amy Acton 47%, a tied race in the state of Ohio. No doubt Ohio is going to be a very, very close one. This video, we're putting it in toss-up as the poll is tied. We'll go to the state of Maryland next for Democratic Governor Wes Moore. Let's see here. Wes Moore is facing off against Republican Dan Cox in this race for the general. This should be a pretty reliable Democratic win. Solid Democratic rankings across the board here. No current polling data as of now, but this should be a safe Democratic win. The state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro and how he performed certainly could have very big implications for a possible 2028 Democratic presidential run that he's probably exploring at this time. He'll be facing off against Stacey Garrity in the general election, and unfortunately for the Republicans, not really too much of a chance here of a win, though the most recent poll from Quinnipiac University has shown it to be the most competitive it's been in a long time, and Shapiro is still leading in this poll 53-40, a 13% lead. So it does fall under 15 points, but Pennsylvania will still go as a likely Democrat. In a race, Shapiro should win relatively pretty handedly. Next, we'll move to the governor's race in the state of New York with Kathy Hochul. She'll be facing off against Republican Bruce Blakeman in this race. Once Elise Stefanik withdrew from the race, Blakeman became the endorsed Republican candidate of President Trump. As for the polling data, about a 15-point lead for Hochul across all the averages, though the most recent poll from the Coefficient Republican pollster shows Hochul at 47%, Blakeman at 41%, only a 6-point lead for Hochul over Blakeman in this race. One of the more competitive polls we've seen out of this New York governor's race. New York will go as the likely Democrat on the map here. We're going to move next door to the state of Connecticut between Democratic Governor Ned Lamont. He is getting a challenge between a Republican Ryan Fazio. He's also facing a primary challenge from State Representative Josh Elliott, though I do imagine we're probably going to end up seeing Ned Lamont winning this Democratic primary. The polling, Ned Lamont versus Ryan Fazio, only one poll thus far from the University of New Hampshire, but it was from about the middle of June, so not too long ago. And Lamont's at 49%, Fazio's at 36%, about a lead of 13 points. Connecticut's a safe Democratic state at the presidential level, though the governor's side, it seems to be a little bit more competitive, so it does fall under 15 points. Connecticut goes as likely Democrat. Next, we can go to the state of Rhode Island, a race where the incumbent Democratic Governor Dan McKee seems to be in real danger of losing a Democratic primary challenge to Helena Foulkes, the former CVS executive and niece of former U.S. Senator Chris Dodd. Democratic primary polling, we just got a poll from Tavern Research not too long ago, July 10th through 14th. It was administered, and Foulkes led over McKee 39% to 33% in this race. Mind you, this poll was sponsored by Working Rhode Island Forward, which is a group that supports Dan McKee, and he's still down about 6 points in this race. Helena Foulkes is very likely going to win this Democratic primary. The Republican side, 3 Republicans are running in Aaron Kukian, Aline Paulino, and Robert Raimondo. In terms of the polling, Aline Paulino leads in that University of New Hampshire poll, that same one from before. For the general, most of the rankings have it as solid Democrat. For Helena Foulkes versus Aaron Kukian versus Ken Block, the most recent poll has her from University of New Hampshire leading by approximately, 16 points. Looks like over Aaron Kukian, so it just falls under that 15-point margin, which means we can put the state of Rhode Island into safe Democrat. Next, we can move above to the state of Massachusetts. Democratic Governor Maura Healey is running for re-election. She'll be facing off, in all likelihood, against Republican candidate Mike Minogue. He does have to face Brian Shortsleeve in the primary, but Minogue has been leading for a while now in the polls over Brian Shortsleeve by a very considerable amount. Mike Minogue will likely be the Republican candidate. For the general, solid Democratic rankings, the most recent poll from Healey versus Minogue from the University of New Hampshire, that same poll, shows it to be roughly about a 19-point lead for Healey over Minogue. Over 15 points, Massachusetts, no surprise, goes as safe for the Democrats. Vermont, we have Republican Governor Phil Scott running for re-election, and I'm excited to talk about this one because since the last update we did, we've actually gotten a poll in the state of Vermont, so we do have something to actually go off of here. We know Phil Scott will be the Republican candidate once again. The Democratic side, 2 Democrats are running, and Amanda Jano and Allie Richards in this group after the Attorney General and State Treasurer of the state announced they were not running. The most recent poll shows a close primary between Amanda Janu and Allie Richards, though Janu is leading in the most recent UNH poll. For Phil Scott versus Amanda Janu, 44% for Phil Scott, 33% for Janu, only an 11-point lead. Phil Scott usually in our rankings have him as safe Republican, but he's only leading by 11 points in this poll, and he's only leading Allie Richards by about 8 points. So likely Republican rankings in both, but finally got some polling data out of the state of Vermont, likely Republican ranking for Phil Scott there. Next door to Vermont, we have the state of New Hampshire, where Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte, who was just elected for the first time in 2024. Like Vermont, they do their governor's races every 2 years. She is running for re-election. She's officially declared she should win that primary really with no problem. The Democrat will be Cindy Warmington, who was the runner-up in the Democratic primary for governor in 2024. As for the polling, the most recent poll for this race comes from St. Anselm College, and between June 24th and 25th, Ayotte is 45%. Warmington has 37%, a lead of roughly 8 points for Ayotte in this race. We can put, like with Vermont, we can put New Hampshire as likely Republican. Finally, we have the state of Maine, who Maine, I do believe, just released a new poll as well out of the state, where we know the primaries are now settled. Democrat Hannah Pingree, Republican Bobby Charles, and Independent Rick Bennett are the 3 main candidates that are running in this race. As for the general election, the most recent poll from the University of New Hampshire, administered July 15th through the 20th, so it just came out a few days ago, not too long ago at all. It shows a very large gap in this race, though. Hannah Pingree at 49%, Robert Charles at 35%, and Independent Rick Bennett at 6% of the vote. A 14% gap between Hannah Pingree and Robert Charles, which is a little surprising. I mean, it does still fall under the likely Democrat margin, but I thought it'd be around like 10 points. But a 14-point lead for Hannah Pingree over Robert Charles, and Rick Bennett was still 8% of the vote undecided. Hannah Pingree off to a very strong lead here. We can officially put Maine as likely Democrat. So where do things currently stand now with the latest poll in every single race? The Democrats are currently favored to win 24 governor seats. Republicans are favored to win 23, with 3 races currently listed as toss-ups as exact ties in the most recent poll. Now, obviously, I'm sure the comments are going to sound off already. This is not the most realistic map that we've seen from predictions. You're seeing Oregon is lean Republican, Nebraska is lean Republican, and then you can even look at some of the toss-up ones where you have like Iowa, Michigan, Georgia, New Mexico as all the same ranking as likely Democrat. I guess it's not technically impossible that New Mexico, Iowa, Michigan, Georgia could all be over 5-point margin of victories, but are they going to be the same as New York, which is going to be a 5-point victory? Probably not, but very interesting to see. These are what the rankings currently have right now in the latest poll. Leave all your thoughts in the comment section down below, what you think of these polls, of this map, and this video, and do all that fun stuff. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, I really appreciate it if you could hit like and hit subscribe as well. It would really help me and my channel out a whole lot if you could do that for me. You can see in the circle on the top left the subscribe here button to subscribe to the channel. On the right, there are going to be 2 video pop-ups for you. My latest video will be on the top, and a recommended playlist by myself will be on the bottom as well. In the bottom left of the screen, you'll see my channel name, Anthony's Election Center, which you are currently watching. On my Facebook, Anthony.ElectionCenter is also there. And if you want to reach out to me on email, anthpredicts@gmail.com is my email. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. If you want to look for any of these, obviously in more time, please feel free. But for now, though, that is it. I really thank you all for watching and hope to see you in a future video.